Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Crawford Cast. Today we're going to be talking about the six senses. Yes, you heard that right, I'm not talking about the five senses, we're talking about all six. Now, if you're an occultist like me, or just a fan of things macabre and magical, you might know that the pentagram has 5 points. One for each of the senses, but did you know that merged together this creates the sixth, spirit, which we'll be discussing at the end of the video. But for now, let's jump right in on this icy cold day in England and talk about how you can embed those senses into your writing. So the first thing you want to remember is not to tell your audience. You want to show them. So try not to write I feel, I saw, I tasted, and so on. A better way is to just jump right in and say something along the lines of, there was a tingle on my fingertips, or a metallic tang in my mouth after I had been hit. People don't need you to say that they're being touched or that this is being tasted. Remember, your audience are smart. They can put 2 and 2 together and make 4. They don't need your help on that one. But what are the main 5 senses? Let's discuss, and how can we implement them in our writing? First of all is taste. Taste is one I use quite a lot as a horror writer, because there are so many ways that you can just make people feel ill through it, which can be a perk when you're trying to gross someone out. Think of things like bile, blood, sickness, all of these tastes that will naturally occur and that will add so much depth to your writing. Adding them in will really make things visceral, and it's important to think about where you can actually add these, because a taste is not something we often think about, but it can be a powerful tool. Let me take you back just for a moment to the fact that I have anxiety, and you might think that's unrelated, but hear me out. So, a way to ground myself is to focus on my 5 senses. Okay, I know we're talking about 6 here, but bear with. When you are having a panic attack, it's really good to get yourself grounded. You might want to think about 2 things that you can see, smell, hear, going through all of those tastes, and it'll bring you back to the present. It'll also bring people back to your writing and get them really engaged. So right now, sit down and take a second just to think about what you can taste. Your initial thought might be nothing, and that's okay, but there will be something there, something you're not aware of all of the time, but if you really think, you'll know. Is there steam in the air? Can you taste that slight saltiness? Did you just have strawberries? Is there a sweetness? This sort of thing. And of course, with characters, you don't have to be so rigid. You can think of themes that apply to your characters, or the situation that they're in for that matter. Are they at a fun fair? Maybe they could taste the cotton candy on the air. Particles disperse, and that's how smells sometimes tantalize our taste buds, so you can actually taste something without it being in your mouth. But that brings me on to my next point, smell. Smell is another great one for horror writers, but also romance writers. We've all heard the cliche, the smell of a rose. Well, you can make up your own similar things to emphasize your writing. For me, it's always forget-me-nots. They're so beautiful and elegant. But you could choose any flower or pleasant smell for romance, or anything putrid for horror. It's up to you. Next we have touch. Now, touch is one of the most obvious ones that we often forget. We're always touching something, whether it's your feet on the ground or your hand on a railing. It's a good place to add in detail. And also temperature. Temperature can really set a scene, and although this is partly pathetic fallacy, much like it raining when something bad happens, it can be really useful, and it really sets the mood, and I find that creating good atmosphere in a book is a necessary. The other obvious one is sight. Obviously we know what our characters are seeing, but we need to let our audiences know that too, even if we're misguiding them at the time. Again, you don't need to write that you're seeing something, just have it as there. They'll be in the character's head that way, rather than getting distracted by the fact that it's not them. You really want people to be in your book. So instead of saying, she saw the ivy growing, you could say, the ivy was growing over the abandoned house. Bonus points if you add, the ivy was growing over the abandoned house and a smell of must lingered on the air. Okay, that's not the best example, but I'm going off the top of my head here. Hearing is the last of the conventional five senses, and that works in much the same way. You don't need to say, he heard a bird squawk. The bird squawked is totally fine. And hearing adds a great layer, especially when you want shock. You can even add onomatopoeia, which is words that sound like what they're describing, like bang, crunch, rustle. Those are all really good additions that will deepen your writing technique and improve your story, poem, or whatever you are writing. And now, on to spirit. As I said, I'm an occultist, so this might be a little more exclusive to my kind, but it's definitely something you can include in your writing. Call it a sixth sense, as many do. And remember, it doesn't just need to go in something spooky. You can have a gut instinct about something in any field of writing. Any genre can have people have this sense that doesn't connect to the others. In fact, on a side note, many of our senses aren't connected to those main five, and some people believe that things like depression and disappointment are senses. But the sixth sense and the spiritual sense is one that can apply everywhere. It can be whether the character is feeling God in their life or a mother's having intuition about what her child is doing. It's up to you. Anyway, it's been fun talking to you. I've been Bandy Crawford, and I will see you in another one. Love and light. Bye!